The humanities are dying. Harvard University says the percentage of students graduating with a degree in the humanities has halved in the past 50 years. What does that say about us? And what are the implications for our future selves? I'm Annalise Borges, and this is The Stream.
What's my major? Oh, I'm an English major. Yeah, usually when I tell people that, they're like, oh, so you want to teach? Or, oh, so you want to be a writer? Or just, why?
The way you feel. One kiss is all it takes. Falling in love with me.
Half of these are for one class. I mean, hear me out.
One of the biggest concerns I hear, and concerns I had for a long time about majoring in English or English literature, is how does that translate to a job after you graduate?
What? Who does she think she is? Be when they discover you've died.
To be or not to be a college graduate, I really don't know how long I could keep suffering through this major. It is so much writing.
Last year, the total first-year headcount across all segments of higher education in the US was down 5%. That happened for a number of reasons, including the financial burden of incurring massive debt in order to get a degree in an uncertain world. But today we're going to focus on the decline in the number of enrollments in humanities, and more specifically in English departments, which prompted many to consider shutting their classrooms. Across social media, we see content about the reasons why students are not choosing literature anymore, and the numbers are backing up their, at times, humorous TikTok videos. In the UK, the overall number of students enrolling for English studies has dropped from 42,000 to 37,000 since 2019. And in the US, it became the fastest declining major between 2013 and 2018 by 25%. The Morrison government in Australia decided in 2021 to reduce government contributions for degrees like English, Communications and Culture, which means students wanting to pursue those fields need to pay more in tuition fees. On the other hand, the funding for engineering and medical majors has increased. So what kind of society will emerge if humanities studies are, as a whole, end up scrapped from curricula? To help us answer that and more, we have joining us today Sukhaja Satishchandra, a content creator sharing her passion for reading on Instagram. She's with us from Bengaluru. Katie Hutchinson, a STEM student pursuing her doctorate at the University of Oxford. She's joining us from Tena in Ecuador. Farah Sharji, a career coach, content creator and software engineer in San Francisco. And Omid Rezayan, a Silicon Valley insider and founder of Omid.ai, who's helping those hiring find the right fit. He's joining us today from Tehran. Thank you all so much for your time. Sukhaja, I want to start with you. Why did you study English literature, and what would you say it taught you?
Right. Thank you for your question. I studied English literature because it was something I was passionate about doing. From when I was in the 5th grade, I kind of knew that's the field that I wanted to pursue. And that's the reason why I went into the arts and humanities right after my 10th, my ICSE board exam. I decided to pursue secondary education and then move into an undergraduation followed by a master's in English literature, because I knew it from a very early on that this is something I wanted to do, because I was extremely passionate about stories and make-believe, the world of imagination and all of that. So.
Did it give you what you expected?
Yes, absolutely. But more than the degree itself. So I did my degree in the United Kingdom at the University of Leeds. More than the degree itself, it was the connections and the conversations I had and the connections I made with the people around. I think that I take away for life more than, just studying the literature, but it was everything else that was happening around me, which made it a very interesting experience in terms of learning. So I wouldn't trade that.
You wouldn't trade that. That's nice to hear. Katie, you're actually part of the trend we're talking about in terms of people not following humanities. Was STEM always a path you favored, or did it have anything to do with the job market and the prospects you had?
Thanks for your question. For me, I was never I never perceived myself as that much of a creative person when I was younger. Obviously, now I am a creator, so things have changed slightly. But for me, working in climate change now, it's not where the money is within STEM. So the career market was never that big of a driver for me. I think if it was, I would have headed more into the tech, the engineering side of things. For me, it was just a genuine love of STEM and of biology and the living world that kind of drove me to where I am now.
And you're going to tell us more about your choices and about your plans for the future as well in the course of the show. But I want to bring Farah in because as a career coach, Farah, your job is to get people jobs. And I wanted to know what you're observing in terms of the changes of graduates who are coming out of uni with perhaps, and I don't want to make assumptions, but perhaps less contact with philosophy and arts and literature. Does that affect their ability to actually communicate or express themselves, or is this just a misconception?
Thank you for your question. I do think there's a bit of both components because, I love Gen Z. I love these new graduates. They're full of hope and they're so technologically advanced compared to maybe some of the older generations. However, I do see that there are some missing components when it comes to communication and some of that lack of humanities or, even if I quote a famous book, if I say et tu Brute, some of them don't even know what that means. And so sometimes that can fall short in the workplace when people are making references that they really should have had context around during their education, but they didn't.
And Omid, I introduced you as a Silicon Valley insider, but I know you and Farah actually met before in the Silicon Valley, so you're both insiders. You work with the likes of Google and you help companies find competent professionals. Is what Farah just said, is that a reality in your days right now? Is the market telling you that young professionals sometimes lack certain references and at least perhaps have a hard time contextualizing certain things?
Yeah, let me give a practical example. This is a real world example. We're working project work. Someone needs to get in touch with someone else. And hey, Omid, they're not responding. I'm like, oh, really? Did you talk to them? Well, I emailed them. Did you talk to them? Well, I pinged them. No, did you talk to them? The person was sitting literally 30 feet across the room on the other side. Getting up, walking, and actually having a conversation to land the point or to brainstorm was far removed. Now, I may be dating myself, but there's this issue of actually the human interaction. It's a tax, right? And so building that muscle is something that folks do need.
And do you think that the decline in humanities is a consequence or a cause in the changes we are actually seeing in society as a whole?
Well, I'm a data-driven person, and it's hard for me to equate causality. But what I can say is that the STEM specialization and the focus on content and output has deprioritized, by my observation, the value in communication. And it's not just the quality, but it's the quantity, right? Like when you want to land a message, they say you got to say it 7 times to make sure that it lands. So it's not happening with the same amount of quality, and it's certainly not happening in the same amount of quantity. And that stresses output when it comes, when everything is fine and you're not under stress, it's okay. But when you're working on deadlines and pressure, that's where that communication quotient becomes important. And we're kind of learning a little bit trial by fire.
Yeah, and we used to have, 30 seconds perhaps to land a message. Now we have, 3 in terms of attention span. This is, it's quite something, quite a challenge. It's important to note, obviously, the decline in humanities has been going on for decades, one would say, but we've started to see the impact of losing touch with the literary world. And some say the internet and social media have made things worse. Take a look.
Our children cannot read, let alone writing a paragraph, let alone comprehension. They cannot read. They do not know how to sound words out. They were not taught that. And if you're wondering, well, then why does my kid just keep getting passed on to the next grade? Because that's what they're doing now. They're not holding the children back. They're moving them on. They're graduating them, knowing that your child is illiterate. Our next change makers, our next lawmakers, our next voters cannot read. I beg of you, take the tablets and the cell phones away. Practice letter recognition and sounds and reading with your child, please. And I'm going to keep it a stack with you. They been new. They been knew the babies couldn't read and didn't care. You know when they started caring? After the pandemic. Them test scores plummeted. First of all, like test scores for reading were like pretty stagnant for the last like decade. But after the pandemic, they plummeted. And now they were like, oh, we got to do something about it.
Sukaja, you share your passion for reading on Instagram. Can I ask you about what kind of feedback do you get? And those observations there, do they resonate?
Yeah, I get a lot of questions from a lot of people, a lot of segments, all walks of life, different age groups. I think right from maybe the late teens up till age 45, I have people asking me, where do I buy my books from? Some of the recommendations I've shared on Instagram and YouTube have been really life-changing for people. They've reached out saying that, thank you so much for like letting me know about this book and things like that. So I think it's really something that I find very fulfilling when somebody found out about a book and then they really liked it thanks to my having spread the word. So yeah, I hope that's the kind of feedback I'm getting. I haven't received any negative feedback per se. I think it's been really positive.
And Katie, you also share your journey on social media. Have you noticed, one thing that stuck with me during the chat we had before the show is that you said, look, I already read a ton for my degree. Yes, perhaps I don't want to read a whole novel. And obviously we get that. We're not comparing the skills here, but I want to ask you a little bit about whether you feel like you're missing out on certain skills because you chose to go another way. You chose to go towards STEM.
Personally, for me, I don't. I think this kind of problem now that we're facing, or the changes in humanities degrees, is kind of the generation below me. So for me, I was really exposed to literature when I was in school and throughout my whole childhood. And it's only now that I'm reading less because I'm reading more academic work in the daytime. But I think it is, yeah, a complex problem for the younger generations who are seeing comprehension going down, critical thinking, opinion formation, because we're just consuming these shorter snippets of content as opposed to long literature.
So you're not a great example of this
no.
because you have actually had a good base. But I also want to ask you about your job prospects. But first, let's take a look at these clips that we sourced from social media.
This chart shows the unemployment rates of 25 to 29-year-olds with bachelor's degrees. Sadly, computer science is #1. People in tech are always roasting liberal arts and communications majors for not having jobs, but they're doing better than us, bro. This right here is what happens when you have years of social media influencers telling everyone to go into CS because you can make 100K plus no problem. And also the people who are in CS right now don't even know how to do it. They just know how to use ChatGPT. Let me know where your major stacks up.
So I get a lot of people confused as to why computer science has such a high level of unemployment, but at the same time there's such high demand for computer science graduates. The main caveat is that they're looking for skilled graduates. And a lot of the people that graduate these computer science and IT degrees, they're not skilled enough to, compete for these graduate roles.
Katie, you mentioned wanting to focus on climate change and research on your work. Can you tell us a little bit more about your plan? You also said that there's no money there, so that's not what is driving you. Tell us a little bit about what you intend to do.
Yeah, sure. So obviously at the moment I'm finishing up my PhD, should be finished this year. And then after that, I hope to go into consulting and working, kind of continuing in climate change. I focus now in Latin America. I obviously am currently in Ecuador. So for me, kind of following that has been from school, really. I did my undergraduate degree in biology, and the whole kind of computer science thing, I don't think I'd have picked it personally, but it wasn't something that was around when I kind of really considered university a couple of years ago, back in 2017. So yeah, I can't really see myself staying in academia. That might change, but I think a lot of people are losing interest in kind of universities and professorships going through their careers, including in the humanities and STEM.
Farah, when it comes to a plan, I mean, Katie has a plan there. Do people come to you with a plan, or are you finding that these younger generations are struggling to actually, I don't know, see themselves in 10 or 20 years and know what they want and where they're headed?
What I find is whenever I'm speaking to anyone, doesn't matter if they're young or older, and for example, when I worked at Google and I would ask them, why are you interested in this position? And they would answer, well, Google is my dream company. Well, they didn't really answer my question, right?
Right.
It's why are you interested in the position, not why are you interested in the company? And what I find is that with my coaching clients, it's the same. And so when they're struggling to get a job, I say, okay, well, let's take a step back. Tell me what kind of industries you want to work for. What companies do you want to work for? And if they know, they may list off maybe 2 or 3 of the top companies out there, maybe one of the FANG companies. So, Meta, Amazon, Apple, Google, Netflix. However, when I ask them why, they're not able to articulate themselves. And so I ask them, what are the main drivers? What's the point of this? What is it that you're doing? Yes, I think computer science is a wonderful degree. I've got my degree in computer science with my minor in English because I knew that the English minor would actually help me with my career. And so when I ask them for direction, which where do they want to go down, they oftentimes don't understand or they don't know. So I have to help them self-discover through asking them questions, through consultative process. And throughout that process, it really helps to shape their understanding of how business operates as opposed to being in academia, which are 2 totally different worlds. Then once they understand that and they have a clear focus, they can move forward.
It is interesting because you said it happens with all ages, not only with the younger generations. Omid, are we missing the point here? Again, we've been talking about the decline in humanities, right? And in people going and perhaps missing out on something because they are not reflecting on what they want to be. I don't know. I thought of university as that in the past. And please, we all know how privileged we are even in only having this conversation. There are many people across the world who don't even get a chance to actually dream of higher education, right? Think about all those students in Gaza who had to stop going to school. So knowing that we're talking about a conversation that is for the privileged few, I wonder if we are, again, missing the point in the fact that going to university per se was a chance to actually figure out all those questions that we had. Sometimes we end up waiting until a midlife crisis to look at them.
Briefly, I want to just pick up on what Farah was saying around, starting with why. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And very few people can answer why beyond some sort of superficial reason. And you ask the 5 whys, then suddenly you get to the root of what's happening. The other thing is, with the data implosion, there's so much stuff out there. It's very hard to think your way to an answer. You have to do your way into an answer and set up safe to fail experiments. Well, this is taking a page out of design thinking. Hey, what do I want to be when I grow up? Or what's really going to be fulfilling for me? You think you know, but you don't really know until you try. Maybe you want to be a doctor. I did, and I couldn't stand frankly, blood. It kind of gave me the creeps, and it's a blessed profession. But until I actually had an internship and I worked with doctors in the medical environment, I didn't know. I actually love teaching, but money counts and teaching doesn't pay. Okay, well, now money is also important. And so you run these experiments and then you learn. And so there's this fear of failure because we got to be bigger, badder, faster. Sometimes you need to go slower to go better. Give yourself time to experiment and find the solution that's right for you. And I'm practicing what I preach. We live in Silicon Valley. My daughter wants to be a teacher, and she has top marks in all the STEM classes. And everyone tells her she's crazy because she's not going into STEM. Her 2 role models happen to be teachers. And I'm trying to live those values. Now, if it works for someone, by all means, but it's not a one size fits all. And this life is a marathon. And do yourself a favor to kind of learn what works for you.
Thank you so much. Sukasha, let me try to give you a simpler question to answer. Where to from here? When it comes to universities, what can they do to perhaps, I don't know, attract people back to these departments, to humanities and these studies? I find the concept of private schools that think their students are clients a bit problematic, but what can be done to attract more people into this field?
Yeah, great question. I think the universities need to go to where their audiences are and speak to the audiences directly where they're usually found. And that would be social media, given that our present generation is so tech savvy and is all over social media. I think it makes sense for universities to target audiences there and, like go indoors, break the myths about English studies and all the things and notions that people have in their minds about what the study of English literature really is about. Tell them the truth, show them what a class is really like on the inside, like what kind of discussions happen, just give them a sneak peek. And I think doing reels and speaking to them in the language that they're used to, like that will really help, shatter the glass and the myth and all of that and let people, come onto the other side and want to come and study English literature. I think using social media creatively helps.
Katie, many people don't actually enter certain courses because they don't really know what to do with them as a career. And social media has some of the answers. Take a look.
An advertising copywriter, an academic librarian, an arts administrator, an editorial assistant, a social media executive.
They call me Hell, they call me Stacy, they call me Her, they call me Jane, that's not my name.
All right, here's how you can get rich off an English degree. First, what you're going to need to do is either change your major to computer science, or if you've already gotten your degree, get a master's in comp sci or go to a boot camp, and then get a job in software engineering.
Katie, what is the best advice you can give people today when it comes to trying to decide what to do?
I think that's a really tricky one. And I'm going to say something really cliche, but you have to do what you love. I think going through a degree and going through a career that you just don't enjoy is just not worth it. And there is no point in forcing yourself to go into STEM if that's not what you want to do, or if it's your parents or someone that is pushing you to go into it. I think really kind of staying true to what you are interested in is vital, because studying and going through a whole career is nigh on impossible if you're not enjoying what you do. So
it's
yeah,
not cliche.
that's a difficult one, I guess.
It sounds absolutely solid. Farah and Omid, one final word from each one of you in terms of advice to people today, in terms of what to do with their careers.
So I would say do your research before you even attend university. Know what it is that you're doing, what you're getting yourself into. When I say do research, look at the jobs that you are interested in. Now, I kind of differ with Katie. I don't believe in necessarily following your passion, but instead identify what you are good at and what you can get paid the most for. In my experience, what I've noticed is that the leaders in Silicon Valley are the ones who've identified this, and they become successful, they retire early, they live a very happy life. And so doing that will make you much happier in the long run.
That's a practical advice. Omid, your take.
I would dovetail Farah's advice with also define success on your terms. Not everyone's success is the same. And if you do yourself the favor of understanding what success means for you, then you have the best of both worlds, and you'll avoid the risk of climbing the mountain only to find there's another one around the corner that you didn't even think about because it's closer to what your calling is.
Understood. Really, really nice and round advice there, Omid, Farah, Katie, and Sukasha. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for being part of the stream. And thank you all for tuning in. Keep the conversation going online. For that, you can use the hashtag or the handle AJStream. Take care, and I'll see you soon.